Right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center. My name is Quentin Ring. I am Beyond Baroque's Executive Director, and we are thrilled to have all of you here tonight for the launch of Dr. Annahita Mahdavi West's book, Dusty Relics. It's an absolute honor to have her here, as well as Teresa de Vroom, Gail Ronky, and Dr. Cornel West. We'll get into the program in just a second, but I did want to start by acknowledging our presence here on Tongva land. As an arts organization, Beyond Baroque, thank you, yes. Beyond Baroque acknowledges the wrong done to indigenous peoples through settler colonialism, genocidal practices, and the violent dispossession of their land. And as an arts organization, Beyond Baroque is committed to uplifting indigenous writers, their stories, their narratives, and their art. Just to tell you a little bit about Beyond Baroque, we are Los Angeles' oldest institution, and we exist to nurture new writing, present contemporary literature, art, and build a diverse literary community. What that principally means is we support poets in particular, but also fiction writers, playwrights, all kinds of writers, artists, performers. We have about 100 events a year here in this theater. We have writing workshops. We have free workshop on Monday night. It's a Monday night fiction workshop. Our Wednesday night poetry workshop, meanwhile, has been running continuously since 1969, has sort of provided the training ground for a huge swath of the LA's better known poets. And we have an art gallery, the Mike Kelly Gallery. Currently that is showing Where Has All the Affordable Housing Gone, which is a community art project dedicated to exploring the loss of affordable housing in Venice, particularly through illegal evictions under the Ellis Act. It's a huge contributor of the homelessness crisis that is sweeping the city. The director of the project, Judy Brampman's here tonight as well. You can ask her some more about it. The closing of it is next Saturday. We'll have some programs around that. And of course, we have a bookstore with our authors' books for sale, so please do buy them after the show. I'm sure they'll be happy to sign them. Just to tell you a little bit about what we have coming up, tomorrow, Sunday, we're celebrating Halloween with a little bit of a punk show in the backyard here. It's called Halloween in Venice. If you want to stick around, come back tomorrow. We certainly welcome you. And then next month, November 17th through 19th, we are hosting the Southern California Poetry Festival. On the opening night of that festival, we will be renaming this theater after perhaps LA's greatest poet, Wanda Coleman, alumni of Beyond Baroque. We'll have Terrence Hayes here from New York, Mimi Tempest down from the Bay Area, quite a few luminaries from Los Angeles as well, Luis J. Rodriguez, Seshu Foster. And then we'll have 3 days of poetry, about 50 poets all told, some commissioned work from Juan Felipe Herrera, Safia El Hilo, and others, and it's going to be fun. So tickets should be up for that very shortly. Check out our website, and please do consider supporting Beyond Baroque. We exist to nurture writers, but we can't do it with the support of our community. If you want to support us, you can purchase a membership for as little as $60. You can purchase in the bookstore. It helps keep these events free. It helps keep our workshops free. If you do have to charge for events, you get a discount. So please do consider supporting us. It is very important, particularly, I think, in these times, to keep a space open for poets and for writers and for everybody to sort of expand their imaginations a little bit. But that's it for the Beyond Baroque story. I am absolutely thrilled to have all 4 of our guests here, and particularly Anahita, who's celebrating a new book. My thanks in particular to all of our staff for working on this program, as well as to Teresa de Vroom for organizing it, along with Gail Ronky. Here to introduce the program is Gail, who is one of Los Angeles' finest poets, a brilliant poet, brilliant editor, and now Professor Emerita of LMU. So please welcome Gail Ronky. She's going to tell you a little bit more about the program. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Quentin. I'm so thrilled to be here tonight and so happy to see all of you here tonight. I'm going to start by introducing Professor Teresa de Vroom, because without her, we wouldn't be here tonight at this event. Teresa is a former colleague of mine at Loyola Marymount University, where she teaches classes in Shakespeare. She's also teaching a Shakespeare class in downtown LA to adults. Until last year, she ran the Marymount Institute at LMU, and in that capacity, she brought the great Cornel West to speak to campus, and yay. That's when she met Annahita Mahdavi West, and eventually found out that Anahita wrote poetry. She asked to see some of her poetry. She loved the poetry and published this book with Marymount Institute Press. So... yeah, thank you, Teresia. Dr. Cornel West is simply one of the truly great people alive in the world today. We all know that he is an outspoken public intellectual, that his books, like Race Matters, are widely read, and that his views on contemporary social, political, racial world are as necessary to us as mother's milk. He's also one of the kindest, warmest, and most generous people I've ever met. I won't be enumerating all of his many accomplishments here, but it gives me a feeling beyond pleasure to introduce you to the Green Party candidate for the presidency of the United States. Independent, sorry. That's even better. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, I should watch TV more. Okay. Tonight, however, is about the poet Annahita Mahdavi West. Anahita was born and raised in Tehran, Iran. She left in 1985 and has not returned. She is a refugee here. She comes from a land of poetry, the land of Hafez and Rumi and the mystical Sufi poets and so many more. And she comes from a family of poets. Poetry is in her blood. In her other life, she has an MA and PhD in psychology and teaches at Long Beach City College. She's an amazing woman and a true poet. Before we get started, I just want to read you what the great revolutionary thinker Angela Davis has to say about Anahita's poetry. The beautiful, healing words of Annahita Mahdavi West, poet of the Iranian diaspora, allow us to glimpse hope and justice even when the realities of our world only seem to offer pain and despair. This inspiring collection of poems creates bridges out of borders and lets us know what it might feel like to be citizens of the world. Pretty beautiful. Okay. And I think we're going to begin with Cornel.
Ooh, that sounded good to me. Let me say that I am deeply and profoundly blessed, privileged, and honored to be in this consecrated space, Beyond Baroque, Southern California, the legacy of poetic expression, courage, vision, willingness to cut radically against the grain, and then revel in the common humanity of each and every one of us, even given the broken, grim, and dim world in which we live. Now, you can imagine one of the greatest joys of my life is to be married to Annahita Mahdavi West. We travel all around the country and the world together, and I'm going to do one of the things that I've hardly ever done in my life, which is to read in public something that I've written. I tend to be more oral, but these words took a lot of time to put together. Indeed. I want to salute Brother Ring. Where's Brother Ring? There he is. Give it up to our brother here. He's one of the caretakers. He's one of the leaders and the caretakers. And Teresia, we don't have a language. We don't have words for our dear sister here. We'll say more about her in terms of her facilitating that, but she's got Shakespeare all shot through her spirit. And that's a beautiful thing to have injected in your spirits. Shakespeare, art versus empire. Truth-telling in the midst of a world of mendacity and barbarity and unbelievable cupidity. And then Sister Gail. My God, what a poet, what a human being. We salute her. Let's give it up, Sister Gail. Oh, yes. Indeed, indeed, indeed. In fact, what I'm going to do before I even get to my words, I want to read what the great Soyinka had to say. Wole Soyinka, you all know the Nobel Prize poet. And poets aren't great because they win the Nobel Prize. Y'all know that. Yeah. Proust missed out, so did Joyce. Conrad missed out, so did Tolstoy. And the greatest of them all, Chekhov, didn't get it. So it's nice to win the prize, but let us keep it real. Greatness comes in a variety of different forms, and sometimes the Committee of Norway or in the Committee of Sweden really miss out. But they hit the nail on the head with Wole Soyinka, and this is what he says about my beloved wife. When we encounter the defiant yet tender lines of such a poet, we know that the flower that was Persia will bloom again. Yes, it's my Nigerian brother. He's a genius. He's a giant.
Say that he never gives book.
I know, isn't that
He never does it.
It's a rare thing. He did it for Anahita.
Because he was so moved by it.
No, I think the words hit him. But here's my forward. Artists are the vanguard of our species. They authorize an alternative world through human imagination, empathy, and courage. They invite us to truthful and painful journeys from and through our traumas to intense dramas of resilience and resistance. All true poets wrestle with the wounds, scars, and bruises of death, dread, and disappointment, alongside a mysterious joy in language and life. Annahita Mahdavi West is a true poet. Oh, yes, she is. And that's not just my bias because of my deep love connection. For over 40 years, she suffered, shuddered, and struggled with the diaspora drama of being a refuge wife, mother, professor in exile from her beloved Iran. Her magnificent mother, Merzaman, and oh, I wish you all could meet her. Her birthday actually was 2 days ago. She celebrated her birthday today in Sweden. 80 years old. Let's give it up for her mother. 80 years young. She is a gem and she is a Jew. Oh, I love her so. And her father, Mehdi, both poets, as well as her brilliant daughter, Nirvana, a PhD student in English and creative writer. She's at UC Santa Barbara, has been the wind at her back. Persians are a world historical people with a long and glorious heritage, but also a sad and treacherous history. The U.S. and U.K. supported coup on August 19, 1953 that overthrew Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, crushed the genuine democratic possibility that led the shattered country down a bloody authoritarian road. The present Islamic Republic, with its fascist police and policies, may be on the brink of collapse, and that was written during the insurgency. So I was being highly optimistic. But everyday people everywhere under whatever oppressive regime has backbounced power. Yeah. The heroic struggles of the women-led movement for life, women, and liberty flourishes again against overwhelming odds. A new world could be in the making. True poets are militants for tenderness, extremists for sweetness, radicals for gentleness, and love warriors for freedom. This is what you find in these powerful and truthful poems of my beloved wife. a soulful voice rooted in the great tradition of Rumi and Hafiz, of Nima Yushi and Farooq Farazad, Ahmed Shamlu, and Annahita Mahdavi, one of the great revolutionary poets of his generation, who is her never to be forgotten father. And I'll say this, that first reading of Anahita took place on the anniversary of the death of my beloved mother. And I'll take a bullet, 2, 3, 4 bullets for her, the center of the heart, even given her absence. And today is the anniversary of the death of her beloved father. So that both readings, right there, Loyola, in this magnificent space beyond Baroque, is what we call in the Christian tradition, kairos. A moment of interruption in the world of routine, a meaning-infused instance in a flattened out time. That's what brings us here to this consecrated space beyond Baroque. Love you, babe. Love you.
Thank you so much, honey. And first, I want to thank everybody for coming Saturday afternoon, and you all honor me and my husband to be to share this evening with us. But this definitely wouldn't be possible without Theresia and Gail. And my husband was saying, I've never seen a book published within a few months. And I
4 weeks.
4 weeks. Yeah. And the story is that we were there to, as my dear sister Gail said, we were at Loyola Marymount University. My husband Cornel had a speaking engagement with Professor Skip Gates, and Gail read a beautiful piece of poetry. I keep forgetting what it was, but I really I loved it, and I looked it up, and we were talking about it, how, I've read it before, and while we were talking, Cornel and Theresia were there, and Cornel saw that paper in my hand. Gail gave the paper to me and said, "You take this home." And Cornel wanted to see what we're talking about, and Theresia was there. And then Cornel turns around to Theresia and says, "Well, my wife writes poetry as well." And I'm thinking, why would she do that? And then Theresia said, "What?" And we talked a little about it, and she said, "Well, send a few of them to me," and that's how it all started. But I started writing a lot of reading and writing essays and some pieces of poetry here and there as I grew up. And the only one that read them was my dad. I would read it to him, and he would give me feedback. I still have a little, book that is from all those years and decades before. And when my husband was talking to me, before all of that, when I was reading some of those to him and some of them translating, and told me, "Well, you've got to publish these." It was a reminder of how my dad always told me, "You've got to publish these." And it's not all of them. He would tell me, not this and this and that, but you've got to publish this. But so it was just really an epiphany, and then this this engagement happens, and a lot of people ask me, "Why haven't you published it sooner?" And there are many reasons. One is that in Iranian culture, everybody writes poetry. Everybody. I mean, you talk to anybody, and even they talk to you, they always say, bring an example of a poet that is either famous or not. But I felt like what I was writing, more than being poetry and publishable, is really a journal of my life. And, how would you feel if your diary is published? I mean, and everybody's reading it. That's how I felt about it. You feel like your all of your privacy is that's how I looked at my writings, because it's so attached to my life. But then I'm really, really blessed and thankful, first of all, that I did it, and to all of you, three of you, without my husband's encouragement, it wouldn't happen, and without your support, Theresia, and yours, Gail, it wouldn't happen. And, as you were saying, honey, that in the midst of this cruel world, there are specks of hope and love that come to you, and sometimes they manifest as people that support you. And I have Theresia and Gail as those who really, your support is just amazing. It's a never-ending fountain of love and support that keeps coming. I have another soul sister here that was also very fundamental in opening the doors for me and supporting me. Another person like you two, that's my soul sister, Professor Kim Branch Stewart, that used to be my chair, that hired me and taught me everything. And so those are. That's when you look around and you see these beautiful people, and you tell yourself, well, it's worth it to live this life in this brutal world, because you come across these amazing people. So thank you so much again for being here. I will do my best to read, my own writings without making mistakes. So should I start? Anything else? Yeah. So some of the pieces were written in Farsi first and then translated. I do that back and forth. I write in Farsi, translate to English. Sometimes I write in English, translate to Farsi. It's really interesting how the translations aren't the same exactly, but it's the same concept. So this one is called Words, and somebody said that was their favorite. I think
it's my favorite.
Yeah. I know Gail gave me her favorite, and this is Theresia's. My words are painted with the crimson wild tulips, my words from a dry, dusty desert. I speak of thirst, of the river running through the mirage, the fish covered in red scales at the deep bottom of the sea. Hear me. I speak of the snow that blankets the mountaintop, of thousands of years, of yearning to fly. Hear my words. No volume, no space, floating in eternity. Words of nothing, words of all things, like the red tulips, the color of blood, like the red scale fish, the color of heart, the color like the sun, shining from the depth of a boiling volcano that will give birth to the ashes. Hear me. I speak of the memory of once a dancing flame. So this is called City of War. And one of the things I think about poetry is that whether you read a classic from decades ago, a century ago, or a modern or a classic now, then different languages, it's really applicable to our lives, to here and now. And that's, I think, it's like the language of music. You can hear a music from a land that you don't know the language, but it does something to you, as if it's what it was made for you. And I think poetry is like that. And I wrote this City of War in the midst of war, the Iran-Iraq war, and you look around and it's war everywhere right now. You know, so the city of, I was thinking to myself, what city in the world is not a city of war? So anyway, this is called City of War. I was born in the city of war, in the days of hate. If you want to find me, come to my little house that is built on nothing. Come at the loneliness o'clock. In my dried garden, only scarecrows smile. In my city, kids play with the wooden guns and grown-ups with real tanks. Here in this city, only ashes are alive, and nobody brings news from the flames of love. It all ends by carving the names on the black stones, and again begins with the sound of another explosion. Alas, I was born in the city of war, in the days of hate, in the season of dried crimson meadows. Should I continue reading?
Keep going.
Okay.
You know, we're not paying you, so keep going.
All right, in that case, I'm stopping. All right. To the ones that won't be back is so another experience of constantly, having people that are dead and shot and killed and kidnapped and missed or missing, but for one reason or another. The ones that won't be back. Sounds come with the burning winds in these thirsty fields. The fire inside Earth's womb fears the birth of ashes. This is the season of ending. The seeds trundle and collapse. The flowers got lost in the dream. The wind took the news of flowers that begin at the end. No blooms, not here in the season of ends. The dust spreads its bed. I saw eternity when those who seek a calm and patient embrace cuddled with the dust deep under. Beyond the far twinkles of time, the dew never washed death away. I see faces in frames dressing the tombstones. The spoiled smiles behind the haze of time stare at nothing. The tears won't wash the dust of death. Still, the burning winds bring the news of flowers blooming under the dust when times end and times begin. All right. So this is Exile. I remember I wrote this sometimes in Turkey back in 1986, I think. Exile. There was no return in the sparrow's decamp. There was no path left to return, not even the thought of it. Behind the trellis in the garden, a little red tulip bloomed. The gardener never saw it, and she was given to the hands of forgotten. She dreamt of rain, and the howling of the wind brought the news of nothing. And no gardener ever looked behind the trellis, and the little red tulip was given to the winds of forgotten, and the little sparrow took her memory to the forgotten city. It's a very cultural thing, the red tulips and the red poppies in Iran. In many, many poetry, they have been referenced. And basically, the symbolic thing is that from the blood drops of people these red tulips and poppies are growing. So you see a lot of references in different.
And hence the beautiful cover of the book.
Yes, yes. Well, we have to. Yeah, yeah. We have to mention Brother Will. Yeah.
Who in 3 weeks did that painting, and it's one thing to be an artist, it's another thing to be an illustrator.
Yes.
And he totally got what you were doing.
Oh, absolutely. William Cooper, right? Am I saying it right? Yeah, when I saw this painting, when he sent it to me and said, well, take a look and let me know what you think, I literally was just staring and trying to catch my breath. Because I thought if I wanted to paint something for this book, this would be it. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, and so yeah, there you go. Oh, it's beautiful. So afterward, there are books on sale, but if you can't afford a book, we'll give you a book.
Yes, absolutely, and all the sales will be going to Beyond Baroque. That's what we want. So buy 3. All right, so next one. I think this is Gail's favorite daughter child. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, this was for my daughter. Her name is Nirvana. I heard your heartbeat. Did you hear mine? Your mere existence blessing my soul. Do I deserve you? Did I have your consent to bring you to this jungle? There is a land far away, not in fairy tales. We have no land. No one ever did. What bliss in landlessness. Our eyes gazed deep as an endless night. I have seen your eyes thousands of years. This joy you bring, a sublime being, is of divine. We have been there before. Do you remember me? The ancestors called you for the land of loneliness, from the land of loneliness, land of cypress trees, spearing the skies, land of golden songs and poets, land of woman never silence. What divinity, what divine joy, what sublime being, what nirvana, daughter child, the ancestors are calling. Okay, so this one's called Home. Here in this nostalgic loneliness, the memories of a familiar gaze do not fit in any eyes. Only the gleams of rendezvous still burn in my heart. In these cobblestone streets, my steps get lost. My words are none. In the corner of this ancient room, my home is lost. My gaze is swung to the cracked window. The scent of the sea is foreign, like me, in lands unfamiliar. In my wistfulness, I seek. My eyes filled with waiting, my hands thirst in holding, yearning for the scent of Caspian. I fly to the other side of time. Destiny brings me back, where the words are silent and the sounds are lost. Here I have everything and nothing, as I learn how to answer the everlasting question, where am I from? What else do I want to do? Maybe three more. Should I just keep going? Yeah, okay. I have 3 more, then after that we'll see.
And then we'll chat.
We'll chat? Okay. Dancing Hair. This is very new. The next few ones that I'm reading are, I wrote them last year, very much impacted by the Women Life Freedom movement. The river of blood runs through the veins of this land. The strings of my sister's hair flying on the trees, painting the frames of freedom's breeze, braiding the basket of dreams, roaring the sounds of freedom, wounded wombs giving birth to mighty daughters, the world falling at their screams, heads bowing down to their fears, crimson songs singing of courage infinite. We do not end, we will rise like our mother's love everlasting, rainbow flags braided with our hair, soaring the winds of freedom, burning fires from the beginning of times, birthing phoenixes, never dying, never lost, rise and rise, just like our mother's love. This one, Jubilee of Misery, the feelings that I had when there is war, there's always oppressed people and people that oppress, the oppressors and oppressed. And one thing that really brings that horrible side of humanity is, regardless of the reasons, and justly so, that people rise up and fight, when people kind of celebrate over killing and celebrate over the misery of others, and it could be your enemy. That just does something to me, and we witness it a lot these days. Jubilee of Misery. These old deep wounds, infected with hate, pained with curses, neighbors dancing on stages painted with neighbors' agony, on these animus fire pits, bodies warming themselves in their neighbors' plight, scent of chronic burning wounds, mystifying torn eyesights, celebration of misery enchanting, faces ghosted under the raining ashes of these forsaken lands, this endemic numbness. From folds of time, Rumi's voice echoes. I am tired of these demons and dream of humans. A longing dream I won't wake up from, oh my ancestor. It's a very famous phrase from Rumi. I'm tired of these demons and dream of humans.
Mother's land.
I'm sorry. Can
Mother's land.
Did I read Mother's Land? Oh, it's the next one, Kim.
Oh, good.
Yes.
My favorite.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you said. Are you taking questions right now or
No,
after?
when you're done.
Okay, so someone has a question, so should we do it when so this is my last one. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Ask if you could add one more in Farsi.
Oh, read one more in Farsi? Okay, I will, sure. But I don't know how many Farsi speakings are here, but okay.
Some of us don't speak Farsi.
All right. We'll hear the music.
We'll hear the music.
We'll hear the music.
That's right.
All right, Mother's Lamb. This has a couple of maybe names that were in Farsi, I think. I didn't translate them. Be ready, Ahrimans, for the caller of Mother Persia. With each anguished sigh, will hunt down the hoofs that roped her lamb. For the mother's curse will sentence your soulless necks. For the wails of mother braved will chain you in eternal dungeons. And mother's endless pain tears will fold your existence into hollows of the underworld. Be ready, offsprings of Moloch. The fire of mother's grieving heart will sentence you into eternal infernos. Those ropes you knot on the necks of these lambs will loop your frozen hearts to breathlessness. With every mother's alas, in timeless echo chambers. Be ready, hellish headsman. You can see I was angry. Okay, so I think maybe I will read The City of War in Farsi. Is that okay? من در شهر جنگ متولد شدم، در تاریخ نفرت، آنجا که کوچه باغ‌ها سرابند و تنها سنگلاخ‌های مردگان راه عبور. اگر به دنبالم می‌گردی، بیا به خانه کوچکم که روی هیچ ساخته شده، سر ساعت انزوا. در باغچه خشک من فقط مترسک‌ها لبخند می‌زنند. در شهر من کودکان با تفنگ‌های چوبی بازی می‌کنند و بزرگسالان با تانک‌های آهنی. در شهر من فقط خاکستر زنده است و هیچ خبری از شعله عشق نیست. قصه ها با حکاکی نام ها در سنگ های سیاه ختم می شوند و دوباره با صدای انفجار دیگر آغاز می شوند. آه، من در شهر جنگ به دنیا آمدم، در تاریخ نفرت ها، در فصل خشکسالی دشت های خونین.
Does this work? I don't know. Is it working? Yeah. Okay. So we'll just chat. But if you have questions, that's great. I want to say a couple of things. The Norwegian, despite the Nobel Prize problem, which you brought up, but the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to Narges Mohammadi. Is that correct? Did I say it right? Narges Mohammadi for her fight against the oppression of women in Iran and her fight to promote human rights and freedom for all, which is what Cornel West and Annahita Mahdavi West are all about. And so, you know, finally the Nobel Peace Prize went to the right person, not Henry Kissinger. Sorry. She's in jail for 30 years and is going to be flogged apparently. So there's that. I want to thank Will Pupa for doing the cover for the book, and for Gail Ronky to do this amazing work. And I just thought we'd just, you know, move on and just have, if you have questions, otherwise we have things to ask. So I think what you've been talking about, which I know too, as someone who doesn't actually belong to a country anymore, what does it mean to be, I mean, you know, your poetry, there's all kinds of ways to write poetry, right? And your poetry is really about the loss of your country. Is it not? In some ways, I mean, it's really about what happened in Iran and how it has affected you in being in exile. And exile is a very interesting concept to me because it means you don't belong anywhere. Right? I mean, you're a woman, you're Iranian. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yes, so a lot of the pieces in this book is a reflection of exile, absolutely. I do have some pieces that are very much about the nature of Iran, but this book, yes, a lot of it is experiences of exile and revolution and war and loss. You know, we talk about exile because the concept is that you are now a foreigner in a foreign country. But before that, when your own country and your own society changes overnight, you still feel like a foreigner. You wake up one day and the streets are the same, your home is the same, the infrastructure of the city is the same, but it's not the same. You know, a lot of things aren't the same. You cannot dress freely. You cannot speak freely. Not that before revolution was, you know, heavens, but so those, I think, the process of immigration starts from that moment of finding yourself almost a stranger in the land that you were born, and that's the force behind I need to leave. And a lot of these migrations are involuntarily because it's a matter of life and death. But when I was referencing that, in one of the pieces that I read, my language and my words mean nothing. When you are whatever you want to call it, immigrant, a refugee, a foreigner in a country, you cannot, you hear words, you don't hear them. You can't say the things you want to say. Even if you say it, it doesn't mean anything because it's in a different language. And it's such a process. This acculturation and integration and adjustment is a very exhausting process. And you constantly find yourself to adjust to a host society's culture, to the host society's language. And even when you have lived in a country for 30, 40 years and you know the language and you are a professor or you are a professional, you're still finding yourself adjusting when you're sitting at the meeting tables. It's you that you have to adjust. It's you that you have to adapt. So it's really it's a never-ending process. But there are, immigrants, there are healthy, there's a lot of stressors to acculturation, and, having a healthy process of acculturation has a lot of elements attached to it. And unfortunately, not every acculturation is a healthy process, and that's why many immigrants and refugees are marginalized and isolated, racism, discrimination, not having resources. So it's just, it keeps giving.
Yeah, I have a question. In one of my favorite poems, and you read it, is Dancing Hair. And I love the line in there about wounded wombs giving birth to mighty daughters. And I want to know if maybe you can talk about women in Iran. I imagine you're talking about Iran, right? So maybe, talk about the women.
Sure. Well, thank you. So what we see right now, or the past few decades in Iran, the oppression of this dark regime is absolutely horrendous. But even before that, it was nothing comparison. I want to be very clear. But the patriarchy exists everywhere, even here. Oh, yeah. Right? You agree? Yeah. So, but in more traditional cultures and more traditional nations, especially the regions of Middle East, it's stronger. However, the process of how women have found ways to progress, go to school, get educated, have professions, and be artists, it's just mind-boggling. Where do they get these strength? And, witnessing my own mother, my own aunts. And so that wounded womb is that the woman that has to constantly struggle to find her place in society and to fight to not to be secondary and still raise daughters and teach them to be the same, and that's a saga as old as time, and that's what I was referencing to.
Say something because this that's fine.
He's a great person.
It's just something to sit with you, though, Bay. all the conversations we have, and then the poetry flows, and I say, oh my God, is that the same person? But listen, I'm thinking, exile for me is such a relative thing. It really is. That, for me, the greatest poet in the Western tradition is Dante. Now, he's in exile in Ravenna, vis-a-vis Florence, but it's the same part of the world in the same language. You see. I was just in Idaho just 2 days ago speaking at Boise. And I'm sure when Ezra Pound left Idaho and went to University of Pennsylvania, he felt like he was in exile. And when he went from Philadelphia to London to meet Thomas Stearns Eliot from St. Louis, he felt like he was in another exile. And you say, ooh, this thing is getting relative here, because it's this sense of being in but not of, over against a mainstream in which you don't fit at all. And then I think of Kafka in Prague. He writes as if he is in exile and he's living in the same city. So you can see how relative it is, and yet when you come to our historical moment, which is the dominant ideology of European modernity, namely nationalism, in the carving up of the world, what is 193 now? Carving up of the world into these territories run by these elites, and trying to convince folk that their fundamental identity to live and die is for a flag. Then we get exile of a different sort, and you get Zaid's reflections on exile. We were just watching it the other night, right? Zaid was just mind-blowing, and just mind-blowing. But Muriel Rukeyser, who's one of my favorite poets of the 20th century, overlooked genius, unbelievable, you see. And she can go down into the South in the 1940s in her wonderful text, The Life of Poetry, and feel as if she's in exile from New York City. So that when we think of exile in that way, it really opens up a variety of different ways of understanding what it's really like to be in but not of, over against a status quo or dominant orientation or hegemony, whatever language you want to use. And in that sense, you say to yourself, babe, after having lived now for 30-some years in old sunny Southern California, how would you define your own sense of who you are vis-a-vis having spent this much time in the American empire?
Why do you have to ask hard questions? Well, I think the most crucial fundamental identity of a human being, at least for myself, is formed at home. And when that's strong, it follows you everywhere. And I owe that to my mom and my dad, and the way that they, my upbringing. No family is perfect, but I was blessed to have a father that was such a modern thinker, a revolutionary himself. Thousands of books always around us, and encouraging us to read and listening to us, reading back to him our essays or whatever we wrote, encouraging us to read more, and allowing us to speak up our minds, and a mother that was absolutely spiritual and angel and did everything she could for the family. So I think that that upbringing does something to your core. And of course, we are a large family, and some of the best memories of you as a child finding yourself, summers and travels, and 50 cousins. They could be second and third cousins. They're still cousins. And so all of those and I wasn't very young. I was young, but I wasn't a child when I left. And so you carry that with you. That's like a backpack that you'd never put down. And so it will help you everywhere you go. And of course, I'm just going to talk about myself. I come to this country, and it's a country that, it's a paradox for me, because the history of Iran has been impacted by the American government deeply, and the wounds that we still are suffering from the coup and many other things. And so I end up here, and I find many opportunities, and I go to school, and I get my degrees, and I get a job, and so it's just such a paradoxical life. You're walking here in this land that really doesn't belong to anyone but the indigenous people. Even, I don't know what land, who really owns the land, but in America, the indigenous people's land, and you are walking on this land, and you still have all those conflicts, internal conflicts. And you sometimes, I'm very outspoken about many social injustices in American society, as I am about Iranian society, as I am about all oppressed societies. But as an immigrant that lives in America, you always get, well, if you don't like it, go back. But the thing is that because you bring your core wherever you go, and I was raised with a father that said, always stand up for truth and justice, no matter the price you pay. And so when you have that core of looking at the society that you live in and examining the society, whether it's America or Iran or anywhere else, you're still, in that regard, the same person. But you cannot also deny that the host society, in this case America, for me, will impact you. We have this back and forth talks about Americanization. If I tell Cornel, for example, about a classic Hollywood movie, he says, "Wow, you're pretty Americanized. How do you know this movie?" But the thing is, I explained it to him that my father was the one that introduced us to classic Hollywood. So Friday nights was a movie night in black and white, and the name of these famous classic actors and actresses, or many jazz musicians, I grew up with them, listening to them. But yes, absolutely, there are things that the host society impacts you. You change, and language is one of the most fascinating things. There are times that I myself forget that I know another language, because I'm constantly speaking English, right? And every opportunity I get, I go back to speaking Farsi. When I go see my mom and family, till this day, I speak Farsi to my daughter that was born and raised here, and she replies back in Farsi or English. So language is a really amazing thing that, when you look at your life and your dynamics as a person in exile, it's just such a phenomenon. I don't know if I answered you.
I thought that Gail is a translator. I'm a translator. You're a translator. What does it mean to translation is a sorry, I don't mean to say this in front of everybody, is a bitch, right? Because you always get it wrong, right? You can't get it right. And so what does it mean to translate your poetry that you wrote in Farsi into English? How does that work? Because it's a problem, right?
Yes, absolutely. So you don't always get the exact same word, because a lot of words and concepts are cultural. And how do you translate that culture that cultural piece, right? But I think for me, when I'm translating a piece from Farsi to English or English to Farsi, first of all, I have few dictionaries around me. And second is that the same inspirations that you have when you write something, for me, when I'm translating, happens, to me. And I know that it's not the same exactly, but the message in some ways are the same. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there are people that are professional translators, and they still say that the words gets lost in translation.
Oh, bottom, thou art so translated.
All I could say is there's one translator. Her name is Sister Constance Garnett, who changed my life. She translated Chekhov, Turgenev, Leskov, Tolstoy. So when I was very young and I encountered those Russians, if it hadn't been for that sister who translated that Russian into an English accessible to me, I'd be a different brother. I really would. Now, of course, the King James Version of the Bible makes a difference too. I don't want to downplay that, though. That's true. Definitely. And then, of course, there's always black music where I didn't have to worry about translation. I was preoccupied with participation. But translators, for me, just open up the gates. Mind, heart, soul, and body.
Well, and I teach medieval literature, and I teach Dante all the time, and I can't read medieval Italian. I can't.
Right, you got to depend on the
You got to depend on the translation, which
which translator you?
Well, I use a bunch of them, but for young kids, I use Giardi. But I've used Singleton. I've used a whole bunch of people. But it is the problem.
Absolutely.
It is a huge problem. You think, like, what word is that really? And I think this about. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much you want to weigh in on this, but I'm not obviously an African American man, but or a scholar that you are, but there's a translation of white to black culture too, which nobody gets. I don't think. I think most white people get. I mean, and this incredible heritage that African Americans have given to this country, which is completely, I'm sorry, and all our immigrants, really, not everyone, but a lot of them, have changed the world. We wouldn't have music. We wouldn't have Ralph Ellison. We wouldn't have, James Baldwin. We wouldn't have any number of people, right, without this culture. And that's a kind of translation to me in itself, which is, what does that mean? My dear friends here from the Catholic Worker, when I was, thank you. But when I was a young kid, I volunteered in their kitchen, and I didn't even know Jeff, but most of the people on Skid Row were white, alcoholic men. Well, now they're black people. I mean, what happened to translate? What happened? And I mean, I can't speak to it because I'm not an expert, but I think this idea of what it means to translate the language of class and social justice is a really big problem in this country. All right, so I was warned by Anahita that when Persians cater an event, they always bring 15 times more food than they're supposed to.
And even when you have guests, yes, you could perform.
So outside, if we're ready to roll. More questions? Anyway, we've got tons of food outside and wine and everything else.
One question in the back. This one on Palestine.
So, Anahita, in the light of the genocide of the indigenous people of Palestine by the European neocolonial settler invasion into their area of the world. Suddenly we now see Iran being taunted and drawn into defending people who are dying in a genocide. Right now, almost 10,000 people are dead, and they're dying every minute. And we are part of that genocide. And they're trying to draw in Iran into these battles. They're trying to get this battle to be larger. Well, how do you feel as an Iranian to know that these super military powers in the empire and in the apartheid state are going to attack possibly Iran?
I don't know. Do you want to? It's a very complicated matter. I think people that look from the outside have a different outlook than people that are looking from inside. I'm talking about Iran. It scares me that they are, playing the drums of war. I think that's been always one of the aims of the some Western governments to start a war with Iran. And absolutely, I am absolutely 100% against war. It doesn't matter what nation it is, right? And what we're seeing in Palestine is horrible. It's barbaric, it's genocide. And that's something that the Palestinians have been dealing with for decades. The misplacement and not being safe and being refugees in their own lands. And of course, what happened on October 7th, also what happened to Israelis, or the 1,000 of Israelis that were dead, was horrendous, in my opinion. I'm one of those people that any human cruelty to me is human cruelty. But Iranian government that is defending Palestinian people has murdered, killed, kidnapped its own people. So I am not one of those. I shouldn't call myself freedom fighter, but I think one of those people that seek justice, social justice, and a globalist to. An anti-imperialist not to mention the crimes of a government just because they're defending, the people that are going through this genocide. It's a hypocrisy, in my opinion. That regime is a brutal regime. They killed thousands of children. Those children that we see in Palestine. And, my heart physically hurts when I look at these videos from Palestine. The same amount of children, if not the same amount, but the same age range of children were killed and kidnapped in Iran by that government. So it's a very complicated thing. And of course, I do not want war against Iran, because bombs don't have eyes. They don't go and say, here's where the stations of terrorist Hamas is, and here's where the station of the mullahs are. No, they kill children and women and men and innocent people first. So this is absolutely horrendous. War is a brutal abuse of human life, human dignity. So and it is scary that they're talking about war against Iran. But at the same time, you also look and see all this Iranian delegation were here a month ago in UN, and they were giving their own speeches and were treated really nicely. So when it comes to politics. My grandmother said something to me before we left Iran because, you know, we were such revolutionaries, and poor woman was always praying for us, waiting for us if we come back from, you know, marches. One day that she was very, God bless her soul, she was very upset and, you know, in a yelling manner and crying and said, you know, no offense to sex workers, because I have a lot of respect for sex workers as well. But she said, you know, in her own mind, with her own culture and beliefs, she said, do not ever trust politics, because trusting politics is like trusting a, you know, the better word is a prostitute, that you trust that this is it, you know, they have a loyalty to you, but it's a different person tomorrow. But I try to translate that the best way that I could. But so, you know, so when I look at the politics of it, it's such a hypocrisy. They sit down at the table with these dictators and fascists and make their negotiations and give money to them and, you know, all these agreements. And then they talk about war with them, and then they go to war and kill people. It's disgusting. It's hopeless. I think people of the world, whether they're Israelis or Palestinians or Iranians or Russians or Ukrainians, if you talk to those mothers, they say, we want a safe life for our kids. We want to be able to send them to school. We want to see them grow up. We want to go to their weddings. We want to have grandchildren. It's the governments, the corruption of power, money, and greed that has done this to us. And I wish I had a better answer.
So allow me to say this, and this is not really a question as much as it is a comment and an appreciation, right? Both in reference to your reading and this phenomenal book, but also in your response to this very complex question, right? So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking just how absolutely brilliant and beautiful you are.
Yes.
And I'm torn between which comes first, right? Beautiful or brilliant, brilliant and beautiful.
I thought you were blind date for the
they're so interlocking in a way that provides us with a kind of access, right, to a way of thinking and knowing the self in the world, right? In your presentation, you spoke to what I interpreted as not an intentionality of writing poetry in a kind of structural way, but writing from the heart, right? And we come to know that your heart is poetic, right? And so we get this wonderful poetry from the heart. And you also spoke about the kind of universality of the nature of what it is that you're writing about. That while it's very particular, it is also so plural to the very nature of who we are, our points of origin, right? How we see the world in which we're currently living, right? And over there, over here, down the street, right? And so I just appreciate so deeply, right, the generosity, right, of your engagement with us, the beauty and the wonder that is you, and how you're offering us a way of thinking and knowing, right, the complexities of the human condition, right, that is both over there, wherever there is, and the ways in which we negotiate that in our everyday life. So this is just
Speak up. One more question. No way. Go ahead. Be loud.
I'm Madeline Merritt's auntie, and I know she's working for you. So I wanted to simply, I wanted to simply ask you, because I see these heart bubbles. You know, I see these heart bubbles. How did you two meet? How did you two meet? Please. Honor us with the story.
We met at a, I brought him to the college that I teach as a speaker. So that's how we met. That's not how we started dating though. I need to get the dates right. So we met, when he came a few years ago as a speaker. He came to the college as a speaker. We met, and it was wonderful. And we kept in touch here and there, and phone calls and emails. And then around, so that was 2016, and he was doing his own thing, and I was doing my own thing. And in 2019. I think sometimes around March of 2019, he had another engagement in UCI, and we met again, and then it was different. And then it was 14 months on Zoom. Because pandemic happened.
Many blessings, many blessings.
Thank you.
All right, so there's a ton of food outside, there's lots of wine. No more questions? One more question. Just one more, because we're all sleepy, so go ahead.
Durud bar Shoma, Professor Annahita Mahdavi West, and good evening. Durud bar Shoma, Professor Annahita Mahdavi West, and good evening, Professor Cornel West. My name is Kusha. I just want to say I totally support your campaign. I think you're the Socrates of our time, and I was pleasantly surprised to learn that your wife is the Furuk Farrokhzad of our time. I hope neither of you suffer their fates. One question that came up, and I really appreciate the imagery of plants and animals that you had in your poetry, was very soothing and serious at the same time. I'm curious to know which figure each of you admire most in Iranian history, and if after that I may please read a poem I brought from my own poetry book that I read to my own dad sometimes here and there, which is about one figure I think has kick-started much progress in Iranian history, if that's okay. It's a short one. But I'd really love to know your opinions, which figures you admire most in Iranian history. I'm sure you probably...
Well, you mean Iranian history or Iranian poetry?
No, Iranian history. Any figure, whether it was like Cyrus the Great, or if it was like Ibn Sina, whomever comes to mind for each of you who was Iranian and contributed greatness to human society.
Yeah, kings and queens aren't my idols, even if they are Iranians. But I know that Cyrus the Great had an impact on the empire. But I also know that all empires are built on blood, so I don't necessarily take pride on having an empire, but I do believe that Cyrus was very ahead of his time. And so, but my idols are my dad, my mom, many revolutionary figures in Iran. Furuk Farrokhzad was, and thank you, it's an honor that I don't think I am today's Furuk Farrokhzad, but thank you for saying that. Furuk Farrokhzad, a woman such progressive, ahead of her time, and before that was Parveen Etesami. She was in a more traditional society, and she was an amazing traditional poet. And Nima Yushid, who is the father of modern poetry in Iran, and many revolutionaries in Iran that I don't want to just go down the line and say their names, but my aunt Gail Ronky, who was a revolutionary and died, but standing up for her beliefs, and many other, like Ibn Sina, of course, a lot of Iranian philosophers that contributed, but there's so many. But I start with mom and dad always.
Yeah, there is something when you're just so blessed. And it's an act of grace. You're not worthy of it. You're just born to a magnificent mother and father who pour so much love and courage and integrity inside of one. But it's interesting that you would mention Socrates, though, brother, because what's fascinating about Socrates is that he exemplifies an intellectual integrity, intellectual conscience at a high level, but he never ever sheds a tear. He never cries. And anybody who's never cried has never loved anybody. at a very deep level. He loves wisdom in the abstract, but he can't love another concrete, fleshified human being over space and time without shedding some tears. That's why Jeremiah and Jesus are qualitatively different. They weep. They weep because they love persons who vanish and disappear. Socrates has a love of wisdom, but when his wife comes in with tears, brings the son on his deathbed, he's overwhelmed. Now, it's also true that for me, the greatest figure of literary status was Chekhov. He never shed a tear either. Not once, even when his dear brother Mikhail died, even when his mother died, even when his father died. But nearly every page of his work and the over 8,000 characters in his work are cries of the heart, full of tears on the page. Cherry Archer, Three Sisters, Seagull, In the Ravine, The Student, The Bishop. We can go on and on and on. So the shedding of tears concretely doesn't mean that somehow you have an underdeveloped capacity to love. But Socrates, as magnificent as he was, did have some challenges. Because I think in the end, at the end of his life, right, when the divine voice tells him, don't practice argument, what is it? Practice music. I missed it my whole life. And he writes a hymn to the gods, and he versifies Aesop's fables and poetry. And for me, the greatest figure is John Coltrane. And that goes far, far beyond words. It's like Elliott and Bert Norton, the four quartets where the words crack and break and slip and slide. You all remember that moment in Bert Norton. They slide, they can't stay still. How come? Because the wind at his back is full of so much radical contingency, vitality, unbelievable vibrancy, but so much complexity and ambiguity, you can't use language that raid on the inarticulate. You can't use language, it's so inadequate. You have to express a melody, or maybe some dissonance that goes far beyond words. And I think that's what I hear in John Coltrane. Not only as an isolated figure, but as part of an overall tradition. It has a deep suspicion of words, even though we're locked into them, but we know they are so radically inadequate. And that the real thing is courage, compassion, sacrifice is something bigger than you, and the test is always in a concrete example. It's not just in words expressed, it's in a concrete example. And that's why the great legacy of Hebrew scripture and the great legacy of that New Testament, that's what that cross represents, right? History, slaughterhouse, that's what Hegel says. History, the register of crimes and follies of humankind, that's Edwin Gibbon. Most of human history, just like what we see on TV every night, is the history of human wretchedness, of organized hatred and greed and fear and envy and resentment, creating structures of domination. And it's just moments of interruption in the history of the species, of love and friendship and maybe even some community and democratic possibility and concern with the least of these, those oppressed, no matter what color, no matter what gender, no matter what nation. Maybe they can have a small possibility of chance given who we are as a species, our wretchedness and our wonderfulness.
Amen.
Absolutely. Did we bless that? Sister Kim.
Complete Renaissance. I don't know. Yeah, as a nerd, I think Shakespeare is a great one to throw in the bag.
Oh, yes.
But Leonardo da Vinci said the greatest art of all is music. the greatest art of all is music. And that is a very profound, you know, as someone who was a painter and a scientist and an intellectual, but the greatest art of all is John Coltrane and music. You know.
Then you see you got Shakespeare in the Swan Song, in the Tempest itself.
Yeah.
Where it says the greatest art of anything is the art of loving, and if you confuse my words with somehow displacing the need to learn how to master the art of living, you missed all 38 plays. That's Brother Billy from the. That's what he's from. That's Brother Billy. That's Shakespeare himself, and that's one of the few moments where it looks as if Shakespeare is actually speaking for himself. The very end of the Tempest, because he's always hiding. We don't know what he believes. We don't know what his philosophy really is.
But we're not sure.
So hard. It's so hard
I know, it's so
to
hard.
tease him out.
Yeah, well, you know, but great people like yourself and like your wife, you can always tease everything else, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
We have food in the back. Please another round of applause for Anahita, Cornel, Gail, Anahita. Stick around.